can understand why she's frustrated. That's how I feel watching her interviews.
How do you feel about the impact that she's having on young Black girls? And I'm going to be completely honest, on Black women.
You know, this is yet another area that's getting vibrant. It's getting full in the way that it should.
One major development going on now involves more to do with Dominique Thorne going off at the fans yet again in the midst of the Ironheart ratings disaster.
It's all ego. You would never find me with an ego like that. Not with my fallopian tubes.
Comes to the numbers. Spoiler alert. Kind of exactly what we expect. Ironheart ratings in the gutter.
Now, Thorne delivered the following in a desperate play to salvage the series. I think Marvel fans, she says, just need to take a step back and to stop focusing on our support for both diversity and LGBTQ and claiming that as some form of a hidden message.
Natalie AI thing seems utterly preposterous and ridiculous, and even for an MCU show, I'm finding it to be a little bit of a bridge too far to go. The Heist crew, all lame. Every single one of them, all lame.
And so in this, I'm not sure what they're meant to be, because this character isn't to be confused with Slog.
Slug, our hacker extraordinaire.
Who is also the exact opposite in the same show. I'm really confused.
Was a massive disappointment in the ratings for them, certainly. We do know, when you go and you look at through these charts, the first couple days it was out, because we have 3 days of Ironheart in these numbers, just like we had 3 days of Daredevil in these numbers. And Daredevil in those first 3 days had over 300 million minutes watched. So, and that was with less possible runtime than something like Ironheart. Yet we know that it hasn't matched that.
Now is that we know that Kevin Feige and Bob Iger, they're also engaging in damage control about this show, saying things like, don't trust the negative reviews, don't trust the trades, stuff like that.
Ironheart is the biggest L of Marvel of all time. The reactions are just spectacular. Supposedly smarter than Tony Stark, bites an electric wire, sells her soul to gain magic powers, uses new powers to steal. What did the writers mean by this? Smoke detector beeps.
And they were doing everything in their power to really prop up this show. That's exactly why they had RDJ, Robert Downey Jr., some weeks ago going on talk shows to really say that Riri is the best thing to the MCU to represent the legacy of Tony Stark.
How does someone go from Marvel's next golden child to a ghost? No cancellation tweet, no final press run, no explanation, just gone.
How do you feel about the impact that she's having on young Black girls? And I'm going to be completely honest, on Black women.
You know, this is yet another area that's getting vibrant. It's getting full in the way that it should.
Dominique Thorne wasn't just supposed to join the MCU. She was handpicked to inherit it. She was the face behind Riri Williams, aka Ironheart, Marvel's genius successor to Iron Man himself. A Gen Z icon built for the next phase of superheroes. Smart, bold, and unapologetically modern. The red carpet was rolled out. The headlines were glowing. And then, just as quickly, everything collapsed. The show flopped. Rumors spread. And the silence? That's when things got really dark.
It deserves your attention. Ironheart deserves your attention. That's how I knew. I was like, oh, they are desperate to get people to watch this show. But after I did my reaction, I kept getting, hey, it wasn't that bad. I just watched it. Hey, I just watched the first 3 episodes. It wasn't that.
Because this wasn't just about a show that underperformed. This was about a $120 million disaster, and one actress allegedly being held responsible for all of it. Now she's off the grid. Her name scrubbed from Marvel's future plans. Her social media completely silent. And that one Instagram story geotagged in Dubai, that was the last anyone's really seen of her.
Not only is she incredibly controlling, but she's a bitch about it to everybody who works for her when things inevitably start spiraling.
Oh my God. She is so full of it.
This is not.
So, what happened? Was Dominique Thorne really the problem? Or was she just another name on Marvel's list, thrown under the bus the moment the numbers didn't add up? Buckle up, because the fall of Dominique Thorne might be the MCU's most savage cancellation yet. And the story behind it, it's way darker than you think.
Ironheart might be one of the worst executed ideas ever in the MCU, because under all that garbage was actually potential.
Dominique Thorne wasn't an overnight casting. Marvel didn't just grab a random face for the next phase of the MCU. This was strategic, calculated. She was introduced in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, not just as a sidekick, but as a torchbearer. Riri Williams, the teenage tech prodigy who reverse-engineered her own Iron Man suit, was Marvel's answer to the question, who fills Tony Stark's shoes? And Marvel made their answer loud and clear.
Yeah, and it's like the real Tony Stark gets like back somehow, and there's like a moment where she's flying through and he's like, who is that? And she's like, I'm Ironheart, Mr. Stark. And he's like, I like that girl. and then he like goes to do something else. Like that would be like the level of something that I think would possibly happen.
Dominique Thorne. Critics called her refreshing, sharp, a perfectly Gen Z. Execs praised her intelligence, her presence, her potential. She was positioned as more than just a new face. She was supposed to lead the MCU into its next era. Behind the scenes, insiders said Ironheart was being built like a flagship property, on par with WandaVision, Loki, even Moon Knight. Dominique was supposed to headline the next wave of Marvel content for Disney+, with tie-in comics, merch, and appearances planned years in advance. They even teased her as a major figure in the next Avengers phase. She wasn't just a side character, she was the future. And the rollout? Everything was set. Hype videos, sponsored interviews, Marvel influencers pushing the narrative. Riri is the new Tony. But here's what the public didn't know. Marvel was nervous. Really nervous. Internally, there was tension. Execs knew they were taking a risk. Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man was still iconic. The fan base was deeply protective. And pushing a new, young black woman into that spotlight, especially one with a radically different vibe and tone, was always going to be a risk.
There is also way too much focus on the LGBTQ community by the fandom in a negative manner, and it just needs to go away, I think, for a healthy story to grow, and for Riri to really share her limelight with...
Still, Marvel pushed forward. The PR machine kicked in. Dominique Thorne was labeled the next face of Marvel, until the day her show dropped. Ironheart was supposed to be huge. Dominique had just made her MCU debut in Wakanda Forever. Momentum was on her side, but when her solo series finally hit Disney+, it didn't make a splash. It didn't trend. It didn't even make a dent. No buzz, no memes, no iconic line, no viral scene. The premiere came and went like background noise. And worse, fans weren't talking about what they loved. They were talking about what they couldn't understand. The pacing was off. The characters felt underwritten. And Dominique, despite her raw talent, was buried under flat writing, awkward dialogue, and what some reviewers called the most forgettable pilot in MCU history. Critics didn't just panic. They were disappointed. This wasn't edgy or bold. It was sanitized, safe, shallow. Words like clemmy, forced, and emotionally hollow started showing up in reviews. Marvel stans, the people who hype up everything Marvel touches, were quiet. Influencers didn't cover it. Fanny edits never took off. And then the data started leaking. Streaming metrics flatlined. The drop-off between episode 1 and 2 was massive. Disney+, once proud to plaster new Marvel releases on its homepage, started quietly burying the series beneath reruns of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The message was clear. This thing bombed. And suddenly all that red carpet hype, all the press coverage, the featurettes, the promotional partnerships, they vanished. What was supposed to be a bold new direction for the MCU had become an expensive mistake. And behind the scenes, Marvel wasn't happy. According to sources, the budget ballooned to over $120 million, with reshoots, rewrites, and delays adding millions in costs. And now, execs were panicking. They needed someone to blame. But it wasn't going to be the writers, or the showrunners, or the studio heads. It was going to be the face of the show, Dominique Thorne. And that's when things turned from awkward to personal. Because according to industry whispers, Marvel wasn't just angry. They wanted retribution. And Dominique, she was about to become the scapegoat of the century. As Ironheart's viewership numbers dropped like a stone, the whispers started. Insiders began leaking that Marvel was furious, not disappointed, not quietly shelving the project, but genuinely furious behind closed doors. What was supposed to be a crown jewel of the next phase had become a financial crater, and execs wanted accountability. That's when rumors surfaced that Dominique's contract included aggressive performance clauses, the kind of clauses that could tie bonus payouts, future roles, even legal responsibilities to how well the show did. And if that's true, then what came next isn't just harsh, it's unprecedented. A Reddit leak, unverified but widespread, claimed that Marvel was exploring options to recoup up to $120 million in losses by legally holding Dominique Thorne personally accountable. Let that sink in. An actress, not a showrunner, not an exec, allegedly being positioned as the financial fall guy for a massive corporate failure. Almost immediately, the fan base split. Some were outraged. How can you pin this on her? She didn't write the show. Others took the bait. She was the lead. She had the spotlight. If the show failed, she failed. But the most shocking part wasn't the debate. It was the silence. Marvel didn't deny the rumors, didn't step in to defend her, didn't even clarify the situation. In fact, they said nothing at all. And in Hollywood, silence from a studio isn't just ominous, it's surgical. It creates a vacuum. And the internet? It rushed to fill that vacuum with theories, speculation, and outrage. Some fans insisted this was Marvel quietly punishing a miscast. Others claimed this was a deliberate scapegoating, a way to protect the brand image by sacrificing someone just small enough to be replaceable. But this wasn't just about a lawsuit. This was about reputation. And in the court of public opinion, Dominique Thorne was already on trial. Commentators online began dissecting everything: her press interviews, her delivery, her acting style. Clips of her awkward line reads went viral on TikTok, edited side by side with Robert Downey Jr.'s slickest moments as Iron Man. The captions weren't subtle. From this to this, memes exploded. Reaction videos piled up. Fan pages that once promoted her daily, now roasting her. And while Marvel remained quiet, Dominique Thorne, she vanished. At first, no one noticed. One day, Dominique stopped posting. No tweets, no stories. Then came the missed interviews, the canceled podcast appearances, brand deals that were once heavily promoted on her page, gone. And suddenly, fans started asking the question, where is Dominique Thorne? No statement, no update, no PR response, just digital silence. That's when the internet did what it always does. It started digging. TikTok sleuths, Reddit detectives, Instagram deep divers, all working overtime. And then came the clue that launched 1,000 theories. A now deleted Instagram story from weeks earlier, geotagged in Dubai. At first, it seemed like a vacation, but as days turned into weeks and Dominique remained missing from the public eye, the theory started shifting. This wasn't just a break, this was an escape. Some speculated she fled to avoid legal drama. Others believed she'd been warned to lay low, that Marvel was orchestrating a soft removal, and Dominique had no choice but to disappear. It got weirder. Fans noticed she wasn't just silent, she was being scrubbed. Photos began vanishing, tags removed, old videos taken down. Even major Marvel-related accounts stopped mentioning her. One Disney Plus press release about upcoming Marvel projects listed 10 shows. Ironheart wasn't on it. No explanation, no delayed, no in development, just missing, like it never existed. And that was the real bombshell, because insiders began whispering that Ironheart Season 2 had already been canceled, quietly, without public notice. Why no formal statement? Simple. They wanted to let it fade quietly, without drawing more controversy to a project that had already flamed out. No announcements, no recasting, no thank you to the cast, just a silent deletion. And Dominique, she became the center of a digital ghost story. Fans were posting flight logs, analyzing Instagram metadata, reposting deleted footage. Some even speculated that she was staying offline intentionally, avoiding interviews to avoid liability. But the theory that gained the most traction? That Dominique Thorne had been removed, not by accident, but by design. And if the internet was suspicious, Hollywood had already made up its mind, because behind the scenes, doors were closing fast. And Dominique, she wasn't just being ignored, she was being erased. By now, Dominique Thorne's silence wasn't just noticeable, it was deafening. But what came next? That was more than silence, it was abandonment. The industry didn't just move on, it turned. Marvel, the same studio that once praised her as the future, stopped mentioning her name altogether. No features, no press, no follow-ups, just the quiet removal of every breadcrumb that led back to Ironheart. And it didn't stop with Marvel. Fan pages that once shared her every move, now deleted. Merch stores took down Ironheart posters and apparel overnight. Even tie-in comic series that were scheduled around her storyline were suddenly pushed aside in favor of new characters. Her co-stars, the ones who once called her a breakout talent, stopped bringing her up in interviews. Some even edited out segments that mentioned her entirely. And when it came time for Marvel's next big convention panel, there was no seat for Dominique, no acknowledgement of Riri Williams, not even a placeholder. It was like she'd never existed. You'd think there would be some kind of announcement, a recast, a pause, a reason, but instead, Marvel quietly shifted the narrative to new titles, new stars, and fresh projects, all while burying Ironheart beneath the rug. And the fans, they followed suit. On YouTube, videos started popping up with titles like The Rise and Fall of Dominique Thorne, Ironheart, What Went Wrong, Why the MCU Let Her Go. But these weren't roast videos. They were made by the same creators who once celebrated her casting. Reddit threads that once praised her acting were now rewriting history. I always knew she wasn't the right fit. Marvel forced it. The show never had a chance. People scrolled back through old praise, deleting their own posts. Comment sections became bad overnight, and the fan base, once divided, began to align. Not with Dominique, but against her. It wasn't gradual. It was immediate. Like someone flipped a switch. Suddenly, every part of her career was under the microscope. Her acting, her interviews, her social media, her silence. And the question changed from where is Dominique to did she ever deserve the spotlight to begin with? It didn't matter whether the show's failure was her fault. In Hollywood, perception is power, and hers was crumbling. And just when it seemed like the damage couldn't go deeper, the internet dug up something it had been waiting to weaponize. That's when it hit. The final blow. Old screenshots started resurfacing from Dominique's Twitter, from past interviews, from Instagram lives long since deleted, posts where she voiced support for controversial things, where she criticized Western media bias, where she called out discrimination, inequality, and systemic injustice in the entertainment industry. These posts weren't new. Some were years old, some were vague, but in the hands of the internet, they became fire. Right-wing YouTubers, Yimaz, and social influencers pounced. Headlines flooded in. Marvel star too social for primetime. Ironheart actress sparks anti-American controversy. Hollywood wokeness backfires again. And this time, the backlash wasn't just online. Brands that had once lined up to partner with Dominique suddenly silent. Fashion lines removed her from lookbooks. Brand ambassadors were quietly replaced. Speaking engagements were canceled with vague excuses like logistical conflicts. Even her talent agency stopped responding to press requests. And when Dominique tried to clarify her views in a quiet, now deleted tweeted, Instagram Live, it only made things worse. She said she stood for peace, that her words were being twisted, but the damage was done. Screenshots had already gone viral, narratives had already hardened, and in a media climate hungry for outrage, nuance didn't stand a chance. To some, she was a bold, socially conscious voice. To others, she was now too radical, too divisive, too risky. And in a billion-dollar industry powered by image and brand safety, risk gets you cut. By this point, Marvel wasn't just avoiding Dominique. They were already planning a future without her. But how they planned to replace her, without a word, without a scene, without even a goodbye, was colder than anyone expected. By now, it wasn't a question of if Marvel was done with Dominique Thorne, it was how they'd erase her without igniting another controversy. And that's when rumors of something even darker began to spread. AI. Not just AI-generated art, not just AI trailers, but whispers that Marvel was already exploring AI-based voice replication and deepfake facial rendering to quietly keep the Ironheart character alive, without Dominique Thorne. And sure, it sounds like science fiction, but it's not. Studios have already started scanning actors' voices, faces, mannerisms, allegedly under the guise of digital doubles. Some contracts even include clauses that allow companies to use a star's likeness in perpetuity. So if Marvel wanted to erase Dominique, but not lose Riri Williams entirely, they didn't need to fire her. They just needed to make a new version, one that wouldn't make headlines, one that would stay silent. Now, there's no public confirmation, no official statement, but fan forums began spotting something chilling in test animations and concept leaks. A new Ironheart, unnamed, unvoiced, and conveniently not Dominique Thorne. And it didn't stop there. Writers linked to the original series quietly moved on to other shows. Producers refused to comment. Even the Ironheart Twitter page, once active, full of teasers and artwork, was frozen. No recast announcement, no tribute, no closure. Instead, Marvel pivoted to other projects. New faces, bigger names, safer bets. And Dominique, she didn't just lose the role, she lost her place in the timeline. Fan-created MCU timelines, the ones obsessively updated with every new release, began excluding Ironheart altogether. TikTok edits turned her scenes into joke compilations. YouTube breakdowns reduced her to a cautionary footnote. Even former fans stopped fighting for her. Because in Hollywood, once you're out of the algorithm, you're out of the picture. And just like that, Dominique Thorne became more than a canceled star. She became a ghost, a warning. And her story isn't just about Marvel. It's about what happens when a rising star dares to fail inside a machine that never admits its own mistakes. Dominique Thorne didn't flame out in scandal. She didn't lash out in interviews. She didn't make some viral mistake that turned the world against her. She simply vanished. No breakdown, no headlines, no final words. And maybe that's the most chilling part. She was chosen to carry Marvel's legacy. She stepped into one of the biggest franchises on Earth. And when things didn't go as planned, she was erased, silently, strategically, permanently. They didn't issue a statement. They didn't give her a second shot. They didn't even defend her. They let the internet rip her apart, piece by piece, and said nothing. Why? Was she too socially correct, too outspoken? Was she simply the wrong casting in the wrong role? Or did Marvel create a monster they weren't prepared to protect? Because let's be real, it wasn't Dominique Thorne who wrote the script. It wasn't Dominique who oversaw the budget. It wasn't Dominique who made the creative decisions that turned Ironheart into a $120 million flop. But she was the one left holding the bag. And in an industry that lives on perception, she didn't stand a chance. No studio will touch her. No brand wants the noise, me, and no fan base, not even the one that once praised her, has stuck around. So here's the real question. Did Dominique Thorne fail? Or was she never given a chance to succeed? Is she a victim of Marvel's overreach? A casualty of online hate? A symbol of how quickly Hollywood turns on its own? Or is she just another name, swallowed whole by a machine that doesn't care who it burns? No matter the answer, one thing is certain. Dominique Thorne didn't just disappear. She was erased, and if it can happen to her, it can happen to anyone.